Hi guys, welcome back to sentence 2. I apologize in advance. That first sentence took about 15 minutes, and I know that is a long time. I will try to make my online classes be a lot shorter than this. But we have to use 2 more sentences to get through, so let's get started, all right? Here we go. So we look up here and we see our first word, soxis. Now that's one of your new vocabulary words, right? What kind of word is this? What is the part of speech? And that is a noun, all right? So we know that the soxum soxi is the nominative and genitive of this noun. So we look at this ending and we know that soxum soxi indicates that it's a neuter noun, that the gender is neuter, all right? And that we have 2 possibilities here with the ease. It could be dative plural or it could be ablative plural, okay? Either one of those 2 is a possibility here, all right? And we're going to look, and we see already, this is the amazing thing, guys, in our second word, we see already that we have the verb. So we have our first clause right here. It's a 2-word clause, all right? Here is our verb, and it's pugnaweramus, okay? Pugnaweramus, I should say. Pugnaweramus. And that word, we know, we break it down. We know it's a verb. So now we have to look at the person, number, and tense. So for person and number, we look at that personal ending. We see the mus, right? And the mus tells us that it is first person plural, all right? So the subject of this clause is we. The subject of this clause is we, all right? Now we have to look for more evidence, more things that we can find to tell us what is the tense and the mood of this noun. So we see this era. This era is a tense sign, and it's the tense sign for the pluperfect tense, right? Because if we look here, we see that this is the principal part for the third principal part of the verb, because we know it goes puño, pugnare, pugnawi. Okay? And that tells us that we have either the perfect, the pluperfect, or the future perfect, right? Because this is the third principal part, stem. We drop the I, and there it is again. So we have this tense sign, which tells us that it is the pluperfect tense, and it is indicative. It's an indicative, so something is actually happening, all right? So what is happening? We had what? Remember, had is the helping verb for the pluperfect. We had fought. We had fought. Now, with what? What did we fight with? What did we use to fight? That's what this is. This is not a verb of giving, showing, or telling, so we can eliminate the dative. So it's the ablative plural. But there's no preposition here. There's no preposition here, so what do we have here? We have what's called the ablative of means or instrument. This is what we used to fight with, okay? So we had fought with rocks. With rocks. And so now we'll look at the next word in our sentence, and we see nay. All right? So with nay, we say, what part of speech is that? Well, that's a conjunction, all right? Now, since we don't have a verb of asking or commanding, right? We don't have a verb asking or commanding. We have the conjunction, and this is, again, going to introduce a purpose clause, but not ut. Ut is a positive purpose clause. This is a negative purpose clause. So this would be in order that, and then next to the verb would be the not. It's a negative purpose clause. All right? This links those 2 clauses. So we had fought with rocks in order that. All right? So now we come back, and we remember this word from the last sentence. All right? We remember nautai from the last sentence. And we remember this from the last sentence with walidi in sentence 1. We see that ending, we see this ending. So again, we have probably 2 possibilities here, right? We have the nominative plural, because this is nominative plural and masculine, right? And we have here the nominative plural and masculine. Now it could be that this could be the genitive singular and masculine. That's possible. Or the noun plural masculine, but genitive singular and masculine. And this could also be the genitive singular and masculine. But again, given its position in the second clause, we probably have the subject of the sentence. We can eliminate these. and we can say the harsh sailors or the bitter sailors as the subject of our next clause. So then we look over to our next word. Right down here, guys, you will see feminas, right? So feminas, again, we look at it, we say what part of speech in that? We say that's a noun, all right? By the way, we say here this is a noun, right? And this is an adjective. And this, by the way, as I should have said in the last sentence, this is an attributive adjective. Because it's an attributive adjective because it is attributing a quality to the sailors. The attributive adjective, okay? The attributive adjective. All right. So now let's get back to this word, feminas. Gender, number, and case. Well, we have feminine, we have plural, and we have the accusative. All right? So this is the direct object of the clause. So the sailors are acting something, they're doing something, and the women are receiving the action. All right? The women are receiving the action. This would be the direct object of this particular clause. All right? So now we have poetatum. So we break down that word. That can only be one thing. That is masculine, that is plural, and that is genitive. Genitives limit another word in the sentence. That's the purpose of a genitive. All right? So it's an odd look right now, but it's the women, looks like the women of the poets. The women of the poets. All right? And we'll see what comes next, right? Because poetatum is limiting feminas. Not just any women, but the women of the poets. All right? That would be plural, the genitive plural of the poets. So we have cladotum. And we look at that and we say, oh, here's another one of those examples. This is a masculine noun because this is a masculine noun. This one has this adjective because cladotum is an adjective. This has to use the masculine endings, the second declension masculine endings, because we see that otum there. So that tells us it's modifying poetatum. So this could be famous or clear or bright, but I think what would make most sense is famous. So this would again be masculine, plural, and genitive. So this is limiting poetatum. So this genitive is limiting this noun, and this genitive noun, adjective is modifying this genitive noun. All right? So we would have the bitter sailors, the women of the famous poets, right? The women of the famous poets. All right? And then we have our verb here. Same thing we saw last time, right? We see the NT and we see this as our stem. Well, it's a purpose clause. So this is the indicative clause. This would be the subjunctive clause. All right? This would be the subjunctive clause. And we know that this is the imperfect subjunctive because we have this stem, right, with that ending. So it's third, plural, imperfect, subjunctive. So typical of our Moreland and Fleischer book, we have a very bizarre sentence here in many ways. All right? But our first clause is we had fought with rocks in order that the bitter sailors, the subject, the bitter sailors might not look at, because spectate means to look, right? To look at, might not look at, right? The women, that's the direct object, that is receiving it. In order the bitter sailors might not look at the women of the famous poets. Might not look at the women of the famous poets. Okay, we kind of hustled through that one, but remember we got here, we have a secondary sequence. We have a secondary sequence here, right? Because we have, this is the pluperfect, so we use the imperfect subjunctive, hence the might, right? Because we're using secondary sequence with a purpose clause. So feminas poetatum. So let's look at this again, right? This is the ablative of means, all right? This is the pluperfect indicative. So we had fought with rocks in order that, negative purpose clause, in order that the bitter sailors might not look at the women of the famous poets. That should be your translation, as bizarre as it might sound. So that is translation for sentence number 2. And we'll move on now to the English to Latin sentence on the next page.